Good afternoon, Miles.
Hey Vince, how you doing?
I'm doing very good. Now, I wanted you, and I see that there's some equipment behind you, so I wanted to ask you, if possible, and taking this from a standpoint of somebody who probably doesn't exercise a lot, right? So I don't exercise a lot. I want to get into it, but I'm apprehensive. I don't necessarily want to do that 10-minute workout on YouTube where I'm going to be exhausted after the first minute. What are some basic exercise that people can do at home that don't require equipment that can get them on that right path?
Yeah, it's a great question. When you're starting an exercise regime and you're not somebody that has acclimatized to a routine,
Yeah.
it's all about the path of least resistance, simple stuff. I'll go through a couple of movements, 3 to 4 easy, simple movements. Before I do that, I'll just preface that by saying the squat, which I'm sure everybody has heard of,
Yeah.
and I'm sure everyone has done in some capacity, is one of the fundamental human movement patterns. We're getting in and out of our chair, getting on and off our couch, getting in and out of our car. You have to have that fundamental baseline strength.
Yeah.
Having a strong core is key. The core is what supports the whole body. It's what prevents lower back pain. And in addition to that, so many people right now are seated.
Yeah.
And if you just aren't strengthening your core, muscles are atrophying, you're going to have issues at that level. And then the third thing is really a stretch for the hips. And the reason being, we're a seated society, seated now more than ever, and the hips will tend to tighten up when chronically in a shortened position when you're seated and your hip is basically flexed.
Okay.
So I can give a little demo of that, just
Yeah.
some basics.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
Perfect. It's convenient. I have a gym in my place.
No kidding, right?
Perfect. So the first movement that I'm going to take people through, I'll just adjust my camera here.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I'm going to take people through a squat
Yes.
and just go over some of the fundamental elements you want to be aware of and cognizant of. So I'll show you from the side and I'll show you from the front as well. So with this squat, actually, I'll show you from the front first. I'm basically going down into a seated position.
Right.
Your depth or range of motion will be totally dependent upon your fitness level and your strength. For some people, just doing a full squat will be a challenge. In
Yeah.
that case, what you're going to do is just focus on whatever range that you can go to. Okay, keeping the chest up, lower back arched, always having a good posture. If you're at home, it would be good if you could do this in front of a mirror to have some type of environmental feedback to know kind of where you're at, or have your partner or kids give you some feedback. Hopefully they give you useful feedback.
Right.
And then with the knees, a common mistake is the knees go inward. You want to keep
Yeah.
them tracking over the toes. And for some people, depending on where you're at, if you're very overweight or you're a beginner, you might need to hold on to a structure or put your hand on the wall while you do the squat. So that would be a fundamental movement to start with. The next two relate to the core. So one
Yeah.
is called a bird dog, also called a horse stance, and the
Yeah.
other is a basic plank. So for the bird dog, very, very simple movement. Anybody can do it. I'm on my knees and hands on all fours. And what I'm doing, I'm straightening one leg,
Yeah.
squeezing my glute muscle, whilst simultaneously lifting my arm with the thumb up. And essentially what I'm doing, I'm alternating back and forth. I'll show you from the front here so you can get a different vantage point.
Yeah.
So my leg goes straight, my arm goes out. Now, some people with shoulder issues, they might not be able to go in front. They will have to go out to the side because they have rounded shoulders. For some people, this might be very, very challenging. And for them, they'll want to start by just lifting a knee and lifting a hand
Yeah.
and stabilizing and working with that. It seems pretty basic, but again, if you're starting where you're at, some people need to regress further. Now, everybody's heard of a plank.
Yeah.
A lot of people do planks incorrectly. I'll show like a very beginner plank as well as kind of a plank for someone who has a baseline core strength. So if you're starting out with the plank, you want to do so from your knees. Okay, so you shorten the lever length. So I'm going to set up here on my knees
Yeah.
as
You'll
well
probably
as,
need to go a little bit backwards there, Miles. There you
this
go.
is good?
Yeah.
Perfect. Good. So I'm going to be on my knees and on my forearms.
Yeah.
I'm going to go into this position. Now, what's key here is the lower back. You actually want to squeeze your abs so that you tuck the tail under.
Right.
This is what protects your spine and actually engages your core. So you could hold this, for example, for 20 to 30 seconds to start.
Yeah.
But if you have a good level of baseline core strength, you could go up on the toes
Yes.
and keep everything strong from this position. The last thing I'll just go over is the hip stretch. I'll just grab here my trusty mat. So for the hip stretch, I'll demonstrate from the side. Very straightforward, very simple. Okay, I'm going to be in a split kneeling position. I'm going to move forward with a horizontal translation, finding a stretch. And from there, I'm going to reach away to the other side. You'll feel a big stretch through the hip. This one is great for lengthening the spine, stretching out your hips, loosening everything up. Of course, you would do both sides. You'd hold for 20 to 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But those are 4 fundamental movements that anybody can do, regardless of whether you're 8 or 80 years old. And less is more. It's about keeping it simple.
But Miles, so just on the plank, let's say I've never done it before. I do it on my knees. Can I do 10 seconds?
If 10 seconds is where you're at, that's where you would start. Some people think that, oh, if I can't do it for a certain amount of time, it's not worth doing it.
Yeah.
My philosophy is always start where you're at. That's what's
Okay.
key.
Great. Good. Thank you for that. That's very, very useful. And I think the demonstration is great. Anything else, Miles, before we close this off? Anything else that you want to talk about or you think is important or anything about Milesfit that we should be aware of?
Yeah, well, so many people right now, we're on Zoom at the moment, and
Yeah.
so many businesses have started shifting components and elements of their companies online to keep in operation, keep things moving. And Milesfit has done the same thing. We are a private personal train studio, so we only focus on individualized fitness. We deal with all types of goals, from weight loss to postural correction to dealing with pain like herniated disc, knee issues, shoulder issues, stuff like that. But we've been shifting our whole business online,
Right.
and the feedback has been amazing. A lot of people had preconceived notions about doing fitness online,
Yeah.
that it wasn't the same thing as in person. But there's 2 things that are true, whether it's online or in person. Number 1, accountability. You show up to your appointment. And number 2, your coach can see you and give you feedback and guide you, which is really important versus just watching a YouTube video and following along to a workout. Even myself, I catch myself using bad posture if I
Yeah.
saw myself in the mirror. So everybody needs that. So essentially now we have services online. We're doing private one-on-one training for individuals and families through Zoom. And we've even started to dip our toes in the water of doing corporate virtual training for companies, for employees. Yeah, it's been an interesting change of pace, but a fun one and
Yeah,
innovative.
and it's great because, in a conversation I had recently on video, we were talking about businesses really needing to move to digital and to move to e-commerce. So I think you're showing a great example of how a service business, you're not a product business, a service business can quickly move from face-to-face to a digital and even an e-commerce arrangement. And obviously we'll have the details of Milesfit in the credits. Miles, thank you very much for taking the time this afternoon. As always, fun, enlightening. So I hope people will enjoy. Thank you very much. And I'll see you soon on Zoom.
My pleasure. Thank you, Vince.
Thanks, Miles.